We've all heard the accusations thrown in Pyrocynical's direction, the interview by Tommy C with the accuser called Ivory, the response of Pyro, and the very eager tweets of Ivory insisting that he was the victim of grooming and should be met with sympathy. To be honest, I'm surprised that's still a thing. The first time I heard about these allegations and the big question, did Pyro really do all of that, I couldn't help but think, even if all of those allegations are true, what is the big deal? Now this might come across as if I'm trying to downplay young people's negative experiences or defend the lack of responsibility of Pyro, but I have my reasons why I think this whole ordeal is unnecessary. It all starts with the first accusation and the two people involved, Pyro and Ivory. The accusation was that Pyro has groomed Ivory, and for those 7 people that have been following this channel, you by now know that I completely disagree with how the term grooming is being used nowadays. So when asked about details how that grooming took place, the following scenario came to light. A 19-year-old Pyro and an almost 16-year-old Ivory share a common interest in fat, furry vor art. While this art is not explicit, it is considered a sexual fetish. Due to their common interest, they chatted on Discord, exchanged furry art, and occasionally participated in roleplay. So that means the two of them pretend to be fictional characters and wrote fictional interactions together on Discord. Those interactions were apparently sexual, and that was it. That's what the accuser called grooming. All while Pyro lived in the UK and Ivory lived in the US. And while this interaction might have been uncalled for or immature, it cannot even be considered sexual abuse in my eyes. And just like this, the chapter should have been closed from my point of view. Even if Pyro knew Ivory was 15 at the time, what actually took place was so far from grooming that the accusation itself should have never been branded as something that serious. Now let me get this straight. I'm not saying a 19-year-old seeking sexual chats with a 15-year-old is totally okay. But if we look at the worst that took place, it was simply role-playing and sharing art that may or may not be explicit. Nudes were never exchanged, not even asked for. And as far as I know, Pyro wasn't even sure if he's into guys. So if he got off to something, it was literally to the fantasy that the two created together, a fiction, not even real life. Now if it was just that, I call both parties immature and take it off as one of those experiences you make as a teen and feel kinda weird about afterwards. But what followed moved me to make this video. Grooming is a massive accusation. An accusation that should be taken seriously, because the damage that the victims have to carry is lifelong. So if you make a public accusation like this, and all you bring forward is roleplay, you should be aware that criticism and skepticism will come your way. And I'm not quite sure if Ivory was or is aware of this, especially because any sort of criticism thrown his way will be labeled as further abuse of the victim. And also looking at all of his tweets, he is really eager to be publicly seen as a victim of grooming, which just increases my notion that Ivory lacks self-awareness. That doesn't mean Ivory's pain is not real, since pain is subjective. But if Ivory really is in as much pain as he claims, the emotions that he's been harboring seem to be very misdirected, since he goes all in on Pyro. And the reason I think that has several reasons. According to Ivory, he already had full-on sex when he was 15 with grown men. Due to him already being sexually active and seeking out those experiences in online interactions as well, it shows that something at that time made him eager to experience those moments. Now that eagerness can be a product of real-life abuse and grooming. While most 15-year-olds are horny as shit, to be into such oddly specific things as a piece of vor fairy art means that someone must have showed it to you, or you spent a lot of time on porn sites online, cause it's deep down the rabbit hole. And while some sure are naturally curious and eager, I know just as many that used to be overly sexual when they were 15, but then grew up to realize that it was the result of abuse and escapism that led to their behavior. And that might be very possible in Ivory's case. However, this is where I find the accusations thrown towards Pyro unfair and lacking awareness. If Ivory indeed had full-on sex with grown men when he was 15 and actively sought out the mentioned furry kinks, how was it that a written interaction between two people where neither side shows malicious intent had such an impact on Ivory that it caused all of this suppressed anger, sadness, and the belief that Pyro specifically has groomed him. And on a side note, Ivory was unable to even say what he was groomed for. I mean, let me draw this comparison. Did you ever hear a family member have sex when you were a teen? Did you ever got shown explicit porn to as a teen without wanting to? Did you ever overhear people talking about their sex life when you were a teen and that talk putting images into your head? Did you ever find a condom somewhere? Did you ever read a book and came across a sex scene without expecting it? Did you say yes to any of those experiences just now? And are you traumatized? Would you consider yourself a victim of those events? Have you therefore been groomed? Is your whole life a disaster now? Yeah, I didn't think so. And then when we look what actually happened between those two, Pyro and Ivory. Pyro role-playing as a fictional character with another fictional character of Ivory. And let's assume, as those characters, they wrote sexually explicit things online. Okay. And this is the source of your trauma. This stands out amidst of all of the other things that were happening to you when you were 15. Like, don't you guys think in everyday life at school, with all of the bullying, with the pressure of succeeding, with performing, social media and everything surrounding you, this was basically the least of your problems, the least impactful thing that causes you struggles nowadays? And this leads me to a few possible conclusions regarding Ivory's behavior. First conclusion: someone else is convincing him behind the scenes that he's been groomed by Pyro. We saw this behavior displayed in offline TV with Pokimane, Lily and Yvonne as well. When something happens to someone, then a friend of that person hears about it and urges them to make a public statement and tells them they have been the victim of abuse. Yes, victims sometimes don't realize they've been abused, but usually you should look at that with a therapist and not with a friend that might be just as young and inexperienced as you and then make a public massive statement. Second conclusion: Ivory's emotions are very real but very misguided. As mentioned before, possibly Ivory has been through shit and is in a bad place. Often, people in these situations are unable to tell where their feelings are coming from, or are convinced that someone else has been the root of their pain, while in reality, it stemmed from somewhere completely else. And unfortunately, this happened publicly, and our self-righteous culture doesn't care if it's right or wrong. Third one, Ivory is looking for attention. Yes, I know it sounds terrible, but it is an actual possibility. How often have you experienced someone that had a terrible lonely phase or unsuccessful phase and as a result lashed out for the drama and adrenaline that comes with it? If Ivory is completely in control and the first two scenarios I mentioned are not even close to his mental state, then he's completely delusional and it literally feels like he wants the token of bravery and sexual abuse survivor and will hurt whoever is in the process. Anyway, this video is just me giving my thoughts on the matter and how I look at the situation. Let me know if you find one of those three scenarios more likely than the other, and if you like this video, please subscribe. I'm working on more content and I will gladly upload. Cheers.